happens, Coach.
Sure.
Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined by the legendary Coach Ken Green of St. Mary's of Stockton. Appreciate having you here today, Coach.
Thanks, Coach Climo.
So
legendary. I use that term very loosely when you throw out legendary. That's funny.
Not for any of us in the area that know what you've done in your time. So I appreciate the humility, but definitely have earned that moniker from my standpoint, at least. So looking forward to talking with you and helping you share the wisdom and your success with this next generation of coaches. So if you don't mind taking us through your background as a coach, like how'd you end up doing this? I mean, I know we all fall into it in different ways, but you were at Lodi when I first met you, and then you ended up over at St. Mary's. But what was the process before that? And if you don't mind giving us the background.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I returned from college and really didn't have a direction, unfortunately. So I went and visited my old high school basketball coach. That's John Gustorf. Talking about legends. There's a legend for you right there.
Absolutely.
And so we were just chatting it up, and he kind of going, "What are you doing?" That's not. I said, "No, I'm going to apply for some jobs. We'll see." He says, "Well, hey, how would you like to help me out?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to be varsity assistant." He goes, "Okay." So at that time, St. Mary's, so that was 1987 or so. So that year, they were really good. John Hammer's our best player, and you can see the other guys were youngsters. Benny Rishwain and Glenn Griffin was coming up. So a lot of success that year. Then the following year, I stayed again, and I'm just, a real sponge. And I really loved it. It's so exciting being part of it. It looked like I had a connection. So after that first year of assistant, I signed up for National University. So I was working in the daytime. I was assistant coaching in the afternoon, going to class at night. And it only took about a year. And that last year at St. Mary's with Coach Gustorf was when they were 33-0. I mean, what exciting. I mean, they won the section, and unfortunately, Jason Kidd was a freshman at, I believe, St. Joe's at the time, and they played at Spanos, and so they got upset. St. Joe's is probably the best team. They're probably the number one team, but they got upset by Skyline High School, and all of a sudden, we're the 1 seed, they're the 8 seed, and Calvin Bird came rolling in. He was a senior, and on his way to Villanova. And I mean, I was just, like I said, probably the time I was 23. I was going, this is crazy. I love it. And so I had a really great experience, and got a call from Lodi High School. Pete Sacco, who would end up being the commissioner. Pete Sacco was the coach at Lodi, and we had some of the most major battles with Lodi High. In fact, it's just rooted in hatred. He and I, as a player coach, I used to kind of talk a little smack to him when he was coaching. He'd call me some names we can't say on air. But when I was in college, I became really good friends with a lot of his guys. So he calls me up. He says, "Hey, how would you like to be the sophomore coach here at Lodi?" And first of all, it's like, "Are you serious? You want me over here at Lodi?" I mean, and he goes, "No." He goes, we kind of started mending fences, but I was certainly good friends with Walt Harris. Todd Reiswig was one of them, right? So Todd was one of his guys, right? And so then I had my 2 years there at Lodi under a guy named Keith Lowry, who was really solid, and Keith left after 2 years. So here I am, 25 and a half, 26 years old, and I got an RC job. So I was kind of lucky to start early, and that's kind of how I got into that.
And I'm going to come back to this a second time in regards to your St. Mary's experience, but what did you realize, as you mentioned, getting lucky and being in the right place at the right time and stepping into a head coaching role at mid-20s, that you needed to figure out, even though you had been mentored by a legend like Gustorf and having Sacco around and Reiswig and all these guys that are hyper successful, who trained you, right? They prepped you, but now you're moving 18 inches over. What did you realize that you had to figure out?
Well, the first thing when you go from St. Mary's to Lodi, St. Mary's obviously was ultra successful at that time. Lodi was kind of a little, they were in a little down cycle. And when you go from St. Mary's to Lodi, you realize things don't work the same. I mean, you have a really high level IQ basketball player, and you ultimately Lodi guys would get some really good and talented players. But you're like, hey, we can like a pure motion, like Coach Gus was all about, which is basically roll the, it's like you and I are going to head over to 24-hour fitness, and it's read the screener, right? We're going to pass screen away and let's just go play. That was the beauty of Coach Gus and how he taught us and how I worked with him in very few set plays. And so I was thinking, okay, I'm the head coach. I'm the varsity. Let's get back to running some motion. These guys they didn't know how to screen. They didn't understand how to read one. So now all of a sudden you've got to implement a plan. And what plan is that going to be to actually get a bucket? And we weren't really, I would say at the time, the most skilled offensively. But one thing you realize, Lodi guys were tough. And this is kind of how I got into this whole thing with, all right. And I mean, I wouldn't say that I was, I'd say I was an average, maybe a little bit of average defensive player myself. But I played with some guys that could play it. And I understand the value of it. And the one thing that Lodi, when we played them, I thought we were a little bit skilled offensively. But those teams that Coach Sacco and Todd played with, they were rugged. And so they made it difficult for us. I was like, hey, this is what Lodi's got. So that's what I kind of learned. So you got to kind of, in the end, see what you have, right? And how are you going to win? Actually, it's not even win. I think that's the part where everybody wants to win, right? I think you got to start with, how do we compete? I mean, before you even can win, how do you compete? So the one thing that we kind of, realize is, so we're going to really accentuate our toughness and these guys' ability to. They actually at Lodi, they were really they didn't really say they're very unselfish. So defending is something you talk about, in practice, like we'd run a box out drill and you say, okay, and you just give them the go ahead to go. We want to see you guys, forearm, chest, guys crashing, and they see you getting off. They're like, hey, coach loves it when I'm on the floor for loose ball. I can't make a bucket. I can't dribble very well, and I'm certainly not a good passer, but I can go crack somebody, and he loves it. So you have all this, it kind of becomes contagious, right? So, and that's kind of how this, what I learned over there is that experience is you just got to take what you have. And that's even now, right? 25, 30 years later, every year is a little different. So you don't have any height, got all guards. So you got to scheme it a little differently, right? So that's what I learned for that first.
What then became, because you then got the call from St. Mary's and to go back to the alma mater, and you were there as an assistant, then to Lodi, now back to St. Mary's as the head coach. Same question. Moving over in the same chair, I'm still the head coach, but I'm now at a different school. What did you learn through that transition, especially if you can put yourself back in that seat? And what do you think you maybe would have done a little bit differently?
Coming back to St. Mary's was going to be a little adjustment. Just the couple things, Coach Gustav he was a psychology guy. He was tremendous. He was so smart and bright, and his different techniques of motivating were a little different than mine. I'd say I was more of a little, a little firmer, we'll say. Not that he wasn't. Sometimes they talk about sometimes the real strength is in silence and quietness, and he kind of had that most of the time. I would be a little bit more, over the top. But I think that was that when I first got there, I think I wish I would have been a little bit more patient. And that's the thing is when we come into a new place, you want to make a splash, right? So you're like, and you really put way too much emphasis on winning. That's the whole thing. If I would have I wish I had kind of come back to, again, the process, see what I had, then believe in it and kind of grow it and develop it. And I thought I did that a little bit, maybe probably about midway through that first year. I know I felt like my second year there, I was, again, we lost a bunch of guys. We weren't as talented. We just weren't as good. And I really, I think I kind of lost the team because I wasn't patient. I didn't really have a perspective. Really lost. I think that's one thing for it's just, you got to see what you have. You got to have some patience. I wish I had it. And then it wasn't until the next year that I kind of said, okay, we got to dial down. We got to think about a success can happen in a practice. You just look for those small ones and trying to grow. And that's what I kind of learned is I wanted it too fast. That move, it was just way too fast, and really didn't have the personnel to get there. It wasn't until later, and I said, I think we played against you guys, and we got some guys, and so that's what I learned from that experience.
Yeah, and you've had some guys come through there. Let's not get it twisted in your time as well that have gone on to collegiate and professional success. But we'll circle back to that. What would you say after all these years is the best thing you do in your program? And by that, I mean a tangible couple of things that are paramount to building the culture you want to have, that have a large ripple effect, that if tomorrow you ended up going somewhere else and starting fresh, you would definitely take this with you, whether you developed it or you stole it from someone else. Yeah. But it's like super important, and you're offering it as like, hey, people might want to try this. Unbelievable impact in regards to the value add.
Well, you talk about the culture. I think that the number one thing is we all have to know what the priorities are for our program. So for us, we got to think about number one thing. It's your family. All right, basketball is great, right? But we've got to just take a step back on what we are. It's high school basketball, and the most important thing is our family. Our faith, our family, and those are the most. So anything having to do with your family comes first, and it's never an issue. Now, obviously, you don't want guys vacationing because they're family, but understanding when the things arise, whether mom's sick or you got to take care of your baby brother. These little things that arise, that supersedes anything we do basketball wise. Number two is school, because, obviously still high school, right? Student athlete. So we got to take care of school. If you're not academically eligible, you don't even get to try out, right? You got to have 2.0. That's the whole gig. So we don't have any guys that are showing up in the middle of January, right? It's 2.0 October, that first time. It's not, hey. So we really put an emphasis on that. And we also have some guys that have went through our program that are, AP guys. And if the AP, they have, maybe there's a labs at night, 7 to 9, that's time of your practice, or they have to go after school. It's never an issue. And when you make these priorities, it's easier for the player. Because the players sometimes feel like they're being torn and their parents are taking them this way. I don't know if that's the babysit or the biology, AP biology guys. Hey, we have this lab, you have to be there. And then you have basketball practice and a player's getting pulled. This eliminates the pull. Hey, we know what's first. We know it's school, family are always, and they don't get punished. They're not punished for it. And I think if it allows the player a little bit more freedom, then they want to come back to you. They know where they stand, they know where things are. So that clarity has really, I think, empowered a lot of our kids to explore different things and feel comfortable about where they stand on our team, what's important to us. Those are some things that have been really good. And then the other things that related to real basketball is number one, at St. Mary's, you have to guard. You got to guard. There's just no, now some guys guard better than others. And if you don't guard, then you're going to be a half player. You'll be the guy that we need a bucket. Hey, we're cold. You come up the bench, get your 3 minutes, huck up a couple threes, and then sit down. You won't be at the end of a basketball game. These are these things that now, if you can guard, now all of a sudden you have a chance to play, and you have a chance to play a lot, and you can impact games. So that's the kind of thing that everybody can do. This is what I learned at Lodi. because that's when, and you've coached certain teams that don't have the, you're not athletically gifted or talented or deep. So, but you can be tough. Everybody can guard, and you always you have a chance to win. That's the one thing that and that's almost in every sport, right? Giants win 3 World Series pitching and defense. They couldn't hit, right? You have, the Baltimore Ravens won with the quarterback, whoever guys, I'm talking about, so you can always win with defense. They'll give you a chance. So when I was at Lodi, I was like, how are we going to do this? And now all of a sudden, when you get some talent, now all of a sudden you can see yourself maybe having a chance at a section. Yeah. But you're always going to have a chance to win, be 500, get in the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the one thing that, and then the last thing in regard to basketball is at St. Mary's, outside of a few years, almost the ball is shared at our team. I think if you really look at our team, you'd see a guy averages, 15, another guy with 13, 2 guys with like 9, or the ball gets shared. Mm-hmm. And we always, we're going to give it to the guy that's hot, or so that's the one thing. Offensively, that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's funny because you mentioned the toughness thing at Lodi, and you mentioned Ricewig, and I started laughing internally because when we were at El Camino, I used to talk about the Elk Grove defensive philosophy, which was, we're just going to foul you so much that the referees can't call them all and they stop blowing the whistle. And then we have you where we want you. So yeah, I don't know if you remember those teams, but man, that's what it sure felt like.
Well, we used to scrimmage. It's funny. So Todd he was my assistant. He was my, he left, he was working for IBM on the East Coast. He came back and got a teacher credential, and we hired him. So I wanted to be the varsity coach. He was my sophomore coach. How lucky was I? Mm-hmm. Right. And we became like brothers, and we are today. Mm-hmm. But we would fight scum because he was more of a disciplined conservative guy, and I was offensive. I had guys that were freaking shooting 30-footers and behind the back passes. I love it. I love it. And he was like, get that guy out of this. Come on. So when he went to they were denying, and we didn't have the athletes to get out there one pass away, because that's that defense that we did run at Lodi, but we found, hey, the better guys that can just go right by you and get to the rim. There's really not, we didn't have the guys. I remember some of the guys that he had, and that was fun. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me follow up with this. And I know that most of the teams at St. Mary's have been successful over the years. And I wonder often as we coach, where are we looking for ideas and growth? And often I think we find ourselves in the echo chamber of, well, I got to go talk to all these basketball coaches to get ideas on coaching. But I've found some of my best ideas by watching our water polo team, because they practice right outside my office. And I'm curious if you've been able to steal anything or appropriate anything from some of the other sports you've encountered, or even watching your own children go through that you're like, whoa, that's great. I'm going to do that with my team.
I think Coach Franks, our football coach, some of the things they do, like in the weight room, for example, how they warm up. That's certainly what we take from. Just recently, we have a new girls coach, and so I kind of peek in there and kind of see some of the drills that they're running. And those are some of the things that I get some ideas from as far as outside of basketball. But inside basketball, I don't know if that's the question.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's more like, what have you learned watching other coaches? And I try to front load it with this idea that we can only learn from people in our same discipline. And I just think there's a ton that can be taken, watching my daughter's volleyball team and how they celebrate even after mistakes. And it's like, oh, wow, you can do that as well in our sport. But if it's basketball,
don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me going on that. There's just I like the basketball thing is like someone turns it over and you don't look at them and like, come on, man. You kind of look around, you give them a little pat on the rear end, or say, you look at them and say, hey, man, no sweat, right? We'll get the next one. Let's just go get a stop. I know they did the whole thing, 2 hands together and clap there. I was like, I do embrace that because, that's funny. I learned a lot, like the basketball part. I love watching TV. I don't know. I record like every single basketball, every NBA game, and I get a lot of basketball related things. Not obviously don't have to practice, but a lot of ideas from watching that, probably as much. Not that a lot of it doesn't, carry over, but some does,
Right. What would you say is, how do I want to ask this? If you, give me a second here, because I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to frame this next piece. You've been coaching for, 20 years at St. Mary's and 11 years before that. So we're in our mid 30s, and doesn't sound like you're going to give this up anytime soon. The amount of basketball you watch, but I'm curious, throughout that time, one, how has your approach changed? Meaning, you came in at this age and you're now at this age, and you don't have to identify everything, single thing. But if you were to take like 3 bullet points, and it's like, yo, man, look, at X number of years old, this is where I can invest my time and energy. How has your approach to coaching changed?
That's a great question. Highlight? Yeah. So I'll tell you, the biggest, that's a great question. I think about it all the time and how lucky I am. One thing is kind of coming back to originally, what are your priorities as a person, not as a coach, right? And so look, my wife, we're coming up on our 30th anniversary here. It's just, I have 2 daughters raised. One's, in Santa Cruz going, getting her master's. My other daughter, Cassie's in Santa Cruz. Kendall's over in Napa. She's working at a winery over there. And then my wife, Deanne, and I've been getting together for 30 years. So having a, supportive wife and sometimes you miss some stuff, right? And I was missing a lot when they were just growing up. So one thing I learned is you got to put these guys ahead of time. So if you have quality assistants, and this is big for anybody that's listening, and I've had the best. I didn't initially. I wanted to do everything myself. I didn't trust anybody to coach my team. I didn't trust anybody to take them in a summer league game, a spring league game. I wanted to do everything. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned is you can't. And it's just actually, that's how you burn yourself out. So I got to St. Mary's. Not that I had great assistants over at Lodi, but at St. Mary's, I've just been blessed with a staff that's been together the whole time for the most part. For 20 years, I've had some of the same guys. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And to be like Gary Mancebo, who's been with me, and Matt Valverde, and Greg Huber's been now about 7 or 8 years. Steve Keeter had him for, 14 years. And I had some of my Scooter Booms, now our JV coach. These guys been around for like 10 years, and I can go on and on. But it's been amazing. So you let these guys coach, and then as also it saves you in practice too. Like, for example, like I don't have to coach every flipping drill. I can actually sit back. That saves you. Get a chance to evaluate. I never did that. And I wouldn't even go, like, for example, if there's like a trip, say, for example, a couple years ago, my daughter wanted to go to Europe. I went with her in her school. I was, I was gone for like 15, but I felt good about it. So that's the one thing I wouldn't have done that a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But now you understand, you got to figure out, that kind of saved me a lot. That's what kept me around, is delegating, which I would never do. Mm-hmm. And also, when you become, as you kind of grow in this, being a coach, you get to know your own kids. You kind of know teenagers a little bit more, and you realize that they're all going to make mistakes like we did, and you're a little bit more accepting and tolerant. I don't think I was. I was like in my 20s. I was like a crazy, guys would screw up. I was a little bit too animated about a mistake. Mm-hmm. And until I had 2 players that are actually my closest friends today, kind of cornered me in a custodial closet. Coach, every time we make a mistake, you're putting your head in your hands. Mm-hmm. That really doesn't get us going. It's almost like, little things like that, how you react to mistake, getting up and standing, clapping, no big deal, those things kind of keep you around a little bit, accentuating the positive instead of always just being and excuse making. Mm-hmm. Those things don't help the kids. They don't help anybody. Ultimately, we're the coach. Right. So, and kind of understanding what success is. And if you can look yourself in the mirror, know you're doing your best for your players, right? You're putting your best foot forward. I think that keeps you, it keeps you grounded. Mm-hmm. It keeps you, I love the high school game. I don't want to be anything more than that. Never aspired to. Mm-hmm. Not worried about what the other guys if you're always chasing like the section with, like, then all of a sudden you're a one recruit player. I don't do that. I don't even know a lot of people. I know I'm at a parochial school. I can go and people will get. I don't do it, and I feel good about it. I like to coach whoever comes our way. I feel good about it. If we're 16 and 14, we give our best shot. Hey, I can sleep at night. You know, so I think that's important.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's what I continuously hear on this, but it's always from the more experienced coaches, where there comes a time where you reach a point of security where you feel okay delegating. And I don't know how we as veterans can help the younger coaches get to that point faster, because it only benefits us, right? When you're not trying to micromanage everything. And it's like, hey, how do you help someone that's wired the way we were so long ago and be like, yo, you got this wrong. Like, let go of some of the leash.
Yeah, I know it's a big deal, especially and you got to look for those moments. That's the thing, is the younger, you got to look for those moments to empower your assistant coaches, and because they want to coach. That's the whole thing. They're not there just to have a clipboard. They're there to coach, and a good voice, and also the players. That's if you've done this, the players need to hear another voice occasionally, because your voice. I mean, our voices get tiresome. They stop listening. So and what I know is, and I was talking about it's not always easy to get quality assistant coaches, but if you don't have quality, that's the one thing I've learned. You don't have to have the most basketball mind. You don't have to have this guy who's a super X knows. A good person that you would want your son or your daughters in front of. That would be the number one thing, Justin, is a good person that you entrust with these young guys. And then you can build, you can give a practice pen. They've been around enough. They can execute a couple things. But I think that's the key and then have them grow into it. But having good, just solid people. And the more you can surround yourself with those guys, it'll make basketball fun. It'll make post-game stuff fun. Everybody's together. And
well, I think there's the relational aspect of adolescence, especially, I don't think gets enough attention. In regards to your point, having the basketball minds is great, but having people that the kids relate to and are willing to reach out to when they're going through some issues, and they feel like they have an advocate. And it's like my associate head coach, like, one of my athletes and one of my own children called him last week to like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help? And it's just like, as a father, I felt super grateful that my kid had somebody to reach out to, because for whatever reason, they didn't want to involve me in it. And it was like, thank God he's around. And I think those are things that people often miss because you're so caught up in the technicality of the sport. And it's like, no, you just need people around that the kids are going to relate to and that care.
Yeah.
How do you, at a school that again is very successful across the board, navigate the multi-athlete dimension? And I ask this from a standpoint of, I feel like the contemporary push for student athletes to specialize has had a profoundly negative impact on the majority of student athletes, because while it helps a handful, the messaging from the outside groups is that everyone needs to do this, when in reality, most of our kids, if not all of them, that go on to play collegiate athletics are multi-sport athletes. How do you navigate that at your school, and what messaging do you share with your kids and the greater audience of the athletic world?
Yeah, they know it from, first of all, I mean, all of my friends growing up, we all played multiple sports, right? I mean, I myself played basketball and baseball. So I think there's only get one crack. That's what I tell you. So you do it from your first parent coach meeting, introductory in August. You say, hey, we want your kids to go play everything. Go, come out if you're not playing if you're not playing a fall sport, then come out and do some of our fall stuff. We're going to do, we go a couple days a week. We do some conditioning during the dead period. Come out when your fall sport's over. And so we don't make any, and we're in the middle. See, basketball kind of gets a little, it's tough. Your basketball, your football, baseball guys, and we're also good basketball. Ooh, man, it's a tough go. So you don't, again, it kind of comes back to that push and pull. I don't think kids should be caught in the middle here. So communication between you and the football coach, important, especially when it comes to, like, if your team's a good football team, right? And they're going 3 weeks in at St. Mary's, and I've had our starting, we've had a number of them. I don't want to go into that, but you communicate with your football coach. Look, can your guy come in in November? Can he come in on Saturday and just do non-contact shooting, walk through? Yes. Can he come at 7:00 at night because they practice? Yes. So that's number one. You got to communicate. Number two, the other challenge is or with water polo or whatever it is have these discussions. You don't go away from it. It doesn't help to, talk behind someone's back, confront it, or get with them and say, hey, we have this athlete. Let's make it so we can do both. And if they don't let you, they say, no, we don't want, then, hey, then whenever you come out, so you tell the guy, right? And then I think the hardest one would be like the month of June is always a challenge because you got football, they're all playing baseball and all these, man, they're 10 different directions. So I just tell them, just look and see if there's no conflict. If there's a football, basketball, just do do football. If there's nothing, then come up basketball. And they know the more I see them, the better. But you're kind of evaluating them during their sophomore year. You're going to get them. They have to come during that tryout week, before make the team, But you just don't want to pull these guys in a different direction. You have guys that are established. Like I've had some guys that were football, they're Division I football players, but they want to play basketball and they already played for me their junior year. It's like, hey, don't even come out for summer. Just go do football. Or you're a baseball guy who's playing Major League Baseball, like Ty Kelly, who was on our 2016, and he's over there, so he comes from like 2 or 3 games. Just go. He's already established. And actually, it really helps some of the other guys, him not being there, because you get a longer look. And we already know what he's going to do. So you got number one, you got to communicate. You don't want the kids caught in the middle, because then it's no good for anybody. And I never wanted to be one of those coaches. And there was there at St. Mary's that everybody knows that if the kids know, if they don't show up for something, then the next time they're not playing. That's not good. But hey, look, I'm not the athletic director, so but I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. I don't want to be that guy. So
all right, I appreciate that take, and I think again that's often something as well that people need to hear. If you can keep the student at the center of this equation, it makes all of those things easier, because you're trying to.
Justin, it's high school. Okay, it's high school sports. Let the kids, they get one crack. That thing is, you get one crack at it.
Right.
You want them to enjoy all the things they can, because in a couple of short years, it's over.
Yep.
So if they want to go try water polo, and we've had guys that do that, and at the last second say, I'm going to go play football, like your starting center on a team that's not very deep, and he says, hey, I just want to go play football my senior year, never played for 3 years. And I'm like, I said, I've only told one guy. I've told one player in 31 years, do not do it. I said, you can't do it. It's got Ronnie Dubois, who was the coach over at UC Santa Cruz, and Memphis, been around 1995. He started for me since sophomore, and he goes, his 2 other buddies wouldn't play. I said, hey, you can't do that. You're nuts. And I kind of regret it a little bit, but it ended up working out.
Yeah. No, I mean, truthfully, it was a huge shift when I initially came down here out of the Sacramento Valley rat race that we were all in at that time, where you're playing year round, to where, no joke, like, we are a very seasonal school. Like we picked up the balls in November and put them down at the end of our playoff run, and all my dudes were out the next day playing lacrosse or baseball or track. And
good.
It's like, cool, I'll see you next year. It's been great.
But think about this. Think about how fresh. Okay, so there's somewhere in the middle, and that's where, if you're talking to some of the guys out there, somewhere it's high school basketball should be in the middle. So if they're in the gym, and this is why the AAU stuff, and we probably could talk 2 hours about that, but there's got to be some point where you step away, because if you're in the gym all the time, then it's just, nothing's fresh. It's like, it's still, for me as a coach, and I can imagine the kids in a car in a gym every flipping 46 weeks out of 52. Are you kidding me? You gotta do something else. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
But So I think that actually is more effective for our guys, especially their health. And during the basketball season, I think we overdo it. I was always really big on not doing a heavy conditioning before the season, and try to condition. So you want your guys, when it comes February, they're not all flipping taxed. They're really feeling good about, you know, the most important part of the season.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let me wrap up with this. You are now back teaching at a public school. You're still coaching at St. Mary's.
Yeah.
You've taught and coached multiple places. You got two kids that one's out of college getting a master's degree, one that seems to be in college. But what is something that doesn't have to be basketball or coaching related at all, but what is something that you have most recently changed your mind on? I used to be over here and think this, now I'm over here and here's why.
Well, when it comes to basketball, I was always the big on the motion and or doing a little set play here and there. And then we got into working with Ron Dubois. Is we put in the little, you see all that, whatever he's running, the pick and roll offense, pick and roll DHO. You see it at every level of some scheme. And so we got into that. And then the one thing that I started working on is, if you watch like all the NBA or the teams that everybody runs 4 out 1 in. I mean, God darn it, it's the easiest thing to prepare for it if you got to, because everybody's doing it, right? But the one thing I always like about, which we're trying to implement right now, is catching the ball with momentum. Really, instead of just, being open, we talk about take a step to the ball, is I really like guys being aggressive when they come and meet it. So they have some, you have a chance to get downhill or whatever they call, get it to the basket. So that's one thing that we've been really emphasizing a lot recently. And the other thing that we're doing is picking up full, which is something that we, it depends on the team. And then we've probably been doing the last couple of years. I was always just a half court man, and so, playing a little faster like that. But those are probably the most important things we've done basketball wise.
On that second one, why? Because that's the root of the question. Like, you used to be a half court team, now you're picking up full. Why? Like, what's the motivation?
Tempo, because out of that right there, because then you can you can be a little bit more deceptive. So I know the backside double, it creates an opportunity for when you want to put that in, because if you're not doing it right, as soon as you pick up full, just go, hey, here comes the backside double, or whatever, or we call fist 4 red. So it also, you realize, if you got some guys, that's the other thing is, and we've had a couple guys that could go get people. Well, damn it, and you got some depth. Well, let's go, and let's get some more guys on the court. So I think it's it really helped us out. It creates some buckets, especially when you're a little bit offensively challenged. Maybe create some offense and maybe wear the other team down. Maybe you don't have the talent, but if you just putting it on people for half, 3/4 quarter full, then it might create some offense for you. At least wear the other team down. So that's kind of the thing I'm kind of doing a little differently.
What about outside of basketball? What about as a life question? What's something that you've changed your mind on, that you used to believe this and X, and now you're over here?
How long do we have on this planet, right? I mean, how long are we here? So you got to enjoy every day. I love hanging out with my buddies. I think it's my coaching staff. I just take every opportunity I can to visit friends from college, get on a plane and go, East Coast, to go see my good friend Walt. Just take advantage of those opportunities instead of, just, sitting around and waiting for the next ball game, which I do watch that because I love it. But those are the things, enjoying, going to see my kids, and realizing that, every day is, every day matters. And I think you take for granted here, and not to, talk about existentially, but it just seems like take advantage of here we are. And that's why spending time with your basketball team, and don't take this stuff for granted,
Yeah. That's a great way to wrap up. I mean, just a good reminder that, every day matters. And often we get our heads down and we're in the weeds and we're so focused on work that we forget to stop and smell the roses, right? The proverbial cliche there. But I think that's a great reminder as we sign off for people that, you've said it a couple of times. It's high school sports, man. Like, let's not be too serious about it. Do the best you can. And then there's a lot of other things going on. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here today, Coach.
You bet, Justin.
Been great.
All right.